his presence. Thank you for your presence. Thank God for our honored and esteemed pastor and first lady emeritus. I build because they battled. In Exodus chapter number 17, the children of Israel, who happen to be God's chosen people, find themselves in the fight of their lives against the Amalekite army. What amazes me is not that God's children are fighting in Exodus 17, but what amazes me is what their leader by the name of Moses is doing while they are fighting in Exodus 17. Moses is at the top of the mountain, and while Moses is at the top of the mountain, the army of Israel, who happens to be God's chosen people, is fighting down inside of the valley against the Amalekite army. The question has to be raised, why is it that Moses, who happens to be the leader, is not down inside of the valley along with everybody else? He's not down inside of the valley, but rather Moses is at the top of the mountain when everybody else is in the valley fighting against the Amalekite army, because at the top of the mountain, Moses is stretching his hands to God. At the top of the mountain, Moses is lifting his arms to God. In my sanctified imagination, I can imagine that Moses is saying something to God along these lines. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, whither shall I go? Moses is at the top of the mountain while everybody else is down in the valley. And when Moses is at the top of the mountain, he's stretching his hands to God and he's lifting his arms to God. That really doesn't mean much to you until you come to the understanding there are two reasons inside of the Old Testament that people lifted their hands to God. There are two reasons inside of the Old Testament that people stretched their hands to God. The first reason that people lifted and they stretched their hands to God inside of the Old Testament, they lifted and they stretched their hands to God as a sign of surrender. The second reason that they lifted and they stretched their hands to God inside of the Old Testament is not just a sign of surrender, but rather as an act of praise. The Bible is unclear in Exodus 17 as to whether or not Moses is stretching his hands to God as a sign of surrender, or whether or not he's lifting his hands to God as an act of praise. The only thing we know in Exodus chapter number 17 is that as long as his hands are lifted, they win the battle. But as soon as his hands come down, due to the fact that Moses becomes tired, they start to lose the battle. Can I pause for the specific purpose of speaking to somebody in here under the sound of my voice who's in the fight of your life? You don't look like it on the outside, but in spite of how it is that you look on the outside, somebody can attest to the reality this morning. I don't look like it, but I'm in the fight of my life. For somebody, you are in the fight of your life pertaining to your marriage. For somebody, you are in the fight of your life pertaining to your job. For somebody, you are in the fight of your life pertaining to your health. But regardless as to whether or not the location of your fight is in your marriage, your job, your health, or even the church, I want to drop something on you this morning. When you are fighting against Satan, there is something powerful about lifting your hands. This is only for those who are in a fight this morning. I want to say it again. When you are fighting against Satan, there is something powerful about lifting your hands. If you are not in a fight with the enemy, you can keep your arms crossed and you can keep your legs folded. But if you're fighting Satan himself, and it seems as every time you take 2 steps forward, he knocks you 5 steps backwards, I dare you to lift your hands right now. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to get it across, but I believe with all of my heart that if you can stretch your hands out to God, that whatever Satan tries to throw your way, that you don't even have to fight. All you got to do is lift your hands and God's getting ready to fight your battle. Is there anybody in here under the sound of my voice who knows that I serve a God who fights not just some of my battles, but I serve a God who fights every last one of my battles? Through many dangers, toils, and snares I've already come, but it was God's grace that has brought me safe thus far, and it'll be God's grace that'll lead me on. If you can just stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, then victory shall be yours. Can I pause to tell somebody, when you are in the fight of your life, nobody should have to beg you to lift your hands. When you are in the fight of your life, nobody should have to beg you to give God the praise. But when you are in the fight of your life, you don't know how to explain it, but if you can just lift your hands, I got a sneaky suspicion that everything is going to be all right. I dare you to look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Tell them everything. Ladies and gentlemen, it has to be interesting to note that we do not know whether or not Moses is lifting his hands as a sign of surrender. But if he's lifting his hands as a sign of surrender, and as long as his hands are lifted, they win the battle. That furthermore suggests to all of us this morning that when I surrender to God, my enemies surrender to me. I'm going to say that again. If he's lifting his hands as a sign of surrender, and as long as his hands are lifted, they win the battle. That furthermore suggests to all of us this morning that when I surrender to God, my enemies got to bow down and surrender to me. The problem with many of us is that many of us are trying to get our enemies to surrender to us, but we're not surrendered to God. But I got a sneaky suspicion, let that be somebody's prayer this morning. You don't have to fight your enemies. You don't have to cuss them out. You don't have to lay unholy hands on your enemies. But I got a sneaky suspicion that the more I surrender to God, the more he causes my enemies to bow down and surrender to me. They bow down and surrender to me not because of my education. They bow down and they surrender to me not because of my downtown connections. They bow down and they surrender to me not because of how smart I am, but they bow down and they surrender to me because I got the Lord on my side. Is there anybody in here under the sound of my voice who can attest to the reality that, thank God, when everybody else walked off and left you, that God is still right there? Somebody shout, the Lord is on my side. Maybe he's lifting his hands as a sign of surrender. And if he's lifting his hands as a sign of surrender, and as long as his hands are lifted, they win the battle, that says to all of us that when I surrender to God, my enemies surrender to me. But maybe he's not lifting his hands as a sign of surrender. Maybe he's lifting his hands as an act of praise. If he's lifting his hands as an act of praise, and as long as his hands are stretched unto God, if he's lifting his hands as an act of praise, and as long as his arms are lifted up to God, they win the battle. That furthermore says to all of us, ladies and gentlemen, you can say what you want to about a praiser, but praise is my God-given weapon to defeat Satan himself. I'm going to say that again. You can say whatever you want to about a praiser. Isn't it amazing that when it is that you come to church for the specific purpose of getting your praise on, there always that one person inside of the sanctuary who looking at you cockeyed and sideways as if it don't take all of that. Maybe it don't take all of that for you, but you don't know the fight that I'm dealing with inside of my life at this particular moment in time. Is there anybody who's learned that my praise is a weapon? I don't care who tells me to sit down. I don't care who tells me to be quiet. I don't care who says that it don't take all of that. You don't know the kind of hell that somebody had to crawl out of just to get to church this morning. Is there anybody in here, only for those who are in a fight, who can take the next 30 seconds and go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and praise God the best way you know how? This praise ain't got nothing to do with your neighbor. This praise is because I'm fighting for my mind. This praise is because I'm fighting for my heart. This praise is because I'm fighting for my children. I'm in the fight of my life, but praise is my weapon. Isn't it amazing that all throughout the Bible, when the children of Israel got ready to get into a fight, God told them, you don't need weapons for this battle, but the only thing that I want you to do is go out and start blowing on the trumpets. The only thing that I want you to do is go out and open up your mouth and start shouting. And when you shout, the enemy's not going to fight you. The enemy's going to get confused at your praise and turn on himself. In the book of Judges, there was a man by the name of Gideon who led an army of 32,000 3,000, and God told them you had too many people. So the army dwindled all the way down to 300, and they're fighting against another army of which no man is able to count. The number is so high, and the question has to be raised, how they getting ready to win the battle? They won the battle not because of their weapons. They won the battle not because of their swords. They won the battle not because of their knives. God says all you got to do is just go out there and start giving me the praise. And when you praise me and the enemy sees that you are outnumbered, because the enemy has a number that no man can count, and you don't have nothing but 300, the enemy is going to be so confused. How in the world can you praise God with so little? But they don't even realize that little is much when you put it into the hands of God. They went out and they started praising God, and they didn't have to fight nobody. It confused the enemy, and they turned on themselves. Can I pause to tell somebody in Joshua chapter number 6, God got ready to give them the land of Jericho. He says, but when I give you the land of which your enemies are already inhabiting the land, you don't have to fight your enemies. All I want you to do is start marching around the wall. They marched around the wall one time on the first day, one time on the second, one time on the third, one time on the fourth, one time on the fifth, one time on the sixth, and 7 times on the seventh. And the Bible declares that after that 7th time on the 7th, they shouted and gave God the praise, and the walls came tumbling down. God gave them victory not because of their education. He gave them victory not because of their downtown connections. He gave them victory because of their mindset of praise. Now, what amazes me in Joshua chapter number 6 is not that they shouted, but what amazes me in Joshua chapter number 6, they shouted while the wall was still standing. Logic says that if I'm going to shout, I don't need to praise God till the walls come tumbling down. But God says, I need some people who don't operate by logic. I need some folk who can operate by faith and say, this morning I'm shouting while the wall is still standing. Folk on the outside are judging your praise. They think because of how it is that you praise God that you don't have any walls, any barriers inside of your life. But they don't even realize I'm not praising God because my wall is down. I'm praising God as a down payment of faith because I know my wall is getting ready to come down. I don't know what your wall is, and you don't know what my wall is, but all of us got a wall this morning. But is there anybody who can take 30 seconds and celebrate God like the wall's getting ready to come down? When I surrender my life to God, my enemies surrender to me. Praise is my God-given weapon to defeat the enemy. And not only is praise my God-given weapon to defeat the enemy, but the question has to be raised, what happens when you get tired of being surrendered to God? What happens when you get tired of praising God? In Exodus 17, Moses got tired of lifting his hands in surrender. In Exodus 17, Moses got tired of lifting his hands in praise. The question has to be raised, why is Moses tired? The text does not really tell us why Moses is tired, but perhaps Moses is tired for the same reason that many of us get tired. Many of you are tired of living a surrendered life to God because it seems as if serving God does not pay off. Many of you are tired of living a surrendered life to God because the more you speak well of people, the more they speak evil of you. Many of you are tired of living a surrendered life to God because the more you try to serve the Lord, the more somebody comes inside of your life with some mess. Many of you are tired of living a surrendered life of God because it always seems like good people get the short end of the stick. Many of you are tired not just of being surrendered, but many of you are tired of praising God. You too saved to admit it this morning because you don't want to look like the oddball. I'm tired of coming to church, giving God the praise, leaving the same way that I came because I'm seeing no results inside of my life. But can I pause to tell somebody, if you can praise God when you don't see nothing, if you can surrender to God when you don't see nothing, then everything that you've been waiting for, God's going to drop it in your lap. You can't surrender when it comes. You got to surrender when you can't see it. You can't praise him when it comes. You got to praise him when you can't see it. I don't have to see it to believe it. I believe it in order to see it. And if you believe it in order to see it, somebody shout, God can drop it inside of my lap. So the question has to be raised, what do you do when you get tired? Moses has one man on one side. His name is Aaron. He has another man on the other side. His name is Hur. And the Bible declares that as his arms begin to come down because the leader is tired, which says sometimes you can be in leadership and be tired. Sometimes you can have a position and be tired. Sometimes you can have power and be tired. Sometimes people can look to you for all of the answers and you need answers yourself. Somebody shout, I'm tired. But what did he do when he got tired? Moses was not by himself. There's one man on one side. His name is Aaron. There's another man on the other side. His name is Hur. And the Bible declares they start to hold up and lift his arms, which furthermore says to all of us, ladies and gentlemen, that victory over Satan requires accountability. I'm going to say that again. The reason that the children of Israel won the battle was not because of the greatness of Moses, their leader, because sometimes even great people get tired. But the reason that the children of Israel won the battle, it was not because of the greatness of Moses. It's because Moses had accountability in Aaron and Hur. So the question has to be raised, why are they lifting his hands? Perhaps they are lifting his hands to hold him accountable that he might continue to live a surrendered life to God. Or perhaps they are lifting his hands to hold him accountable that he might continue to give God the praise when he does not see anything, knowing that God is going to grant him victory. Many of us are losing against Satan this morning, not because you are not gifted, but many of us are losing against Satan because you're trying to fight Satan all by yourself. But God, if you can just send one real friend inside of my life, I don't need a whole lot of friends. Lord, I just need one real friend. I don't need a whole lot of friends. Lord, if you can just send one genuine friend who's going to hold me accountable in prayer to live a surrendered life to God, and who's going to hold me accountable in praise to praise God when I don't see nothing, your friends will give you the strength to run on when you feel like quitting. Which says to all of us this morning, number one, I need a prayer partner. My prayer partner holds me accountable that I might continue to stay surrendered. Why do I need to stay surrendered? I need to stay surrendered because when I surrender to God, my enemies got to surrender to me. But not only do I need a prayer partner, see, many of us got a prayer partner, but can I take it another further? You don't just need a prayer partner, I need a praise partner. Somebody just missed it. I think I'll say it again. You don't just need a prayer partner. I need a praise partner. I need somebody who can pray, and then I need somebody who can praise. I dare you to do a praise check on your row real quick. I dare you to do a praise check on your row real quick. I dare you to turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor, if you tired of fighting, sit this one out. I dare you to tell them, if you tired of fighting, you can just sit down right here. I dare you to tell them, if you tired of fighting, the reason you can sit down, tell your neighbor this real quick. Tell them, there's enough praise in my mouth. Tell them, talk to them, talk to them. Talk to them, there's enough praise in my mouth for my whole row to get delivered. If you don't feel like praising God, you ain't got to say nothing. I got enough praise in my mouth for everybody connected to me to get delivered all at the same time. Somebody give God the praise. When I surrender to God, my enemies surrender to me. Praise is my God-given weapon that defeats Satan. And it also says to us that victory over Satan requires accountability. That proves to be true inside of the text. I really didn't come to talk about Exodus 17. I just wanted to use that to set you up so I could talk about Exodus chapter number 36. In Exodus chapter number 36, we run into a man by the name of Bezaleel. Everybody say Bezaleel. Bezalel is charged with the task of God of building the tabernacle. Bezalel is charged with the task of God of building the tabernacle / temple. The only difference between the tabernacle and the temple is that the tabernacle was the temporary dwelling place of God, while the temple was the permanent dwelling place of God. So he's charged with the task of God for building the tabernacle for the specific purpose that God might have a house to live in, that God might have a house to dwell in. And what amazes me is not that he's charged with the task to build, but what amazes me is that Bezalel, hear this clearly, ladies and gentlemen, is building in Exodus 36. But while he's building in Exodus 36, it's his grandfather named Hur who's battling in Exodus 17. Shucks, somebody just missed it. I think I'll say it again. Bezalel is charged with the task of building the tabernacle in Exodus 36. But while he's building in Exodus 36, he'd never be successful at building in Exodus 36 if his grandfather by the name of Hur, who held up Moses' arms, was not battling in Exodus chapter number 17. Thank God for what he's doing at New Rising Star. He's building right now. Thank God for what he's getting ready to do at New Rising Star. He's getting ready to build, and we getting ready to move down the street. And I believe that God's going to open doors that no man can shut. I believe that God's going to shut doors that no man is able to open. But when God opens doors that no man can shut, and he shuts doors that no man can open, please don't get it twisted and think you did it because of your education. Please don't get it twisted and think you did it because of how smart you are. Please don't get it twisted and think you did it because of your downtown connections. We would not be able to build our present community if we didn't have Dr. Chappelle battling in the past. Is there anybody in here who can celebrate not just the present generation, but is there anybody in here who can celebrate the previous generation? Thank God for all the battles they fought so that I don't have to fight. Thank God for the foundations they laid so that I don't have to lay it. Which says to all of us, ladies and gentlemen, our elders fought past battles so that we can build our present communities. I dare you to say that with me until East Lake, Brown Springs, and Gate City hears you. Our elders fought past battles. Say it. So that we can build our present communities. Isn't it amazing? In Exodus 17, Hur, who's holding up the arms of Moses, is the grandfather of Bezalel. Hur is charged with battling, but Bezalel, the grandson, is charged with building. Does anybody see the correlation? Does anybody see the similarity? God is not just speaking inside of the Bible. He's speaking a New Rising Star at this particular moment in time. You do understand that my grandfather, Dr. Thomas Chappelle, our pastor emeritus, who happens to be a father to all of us, like a grandfather to all of us, served here for 35 years. I'm the fourth pastor, but he's the third and the longest tenured pastor. Our church is 35 years of age, but out of those 35 years, he served as pastor for 35 years. And here it is on year number 6. God's continuing to take us from faith to faith and glory to glory. But the only reason we can build right now is because somebody else battled in the past. Somebody shout, thank God that the battle's been fought. Somebody shout, thank God that the battle has been won. It is quite interesting to note, put it up so everybody can see it. It is quite interesting to note that Bezalel built the tabernacle. In Exodus chapter number 36, verses 1 through 7, Bezalel is an architect. Bezalel is an engineer. Bezalel is a contractor, all at the same time. It is Bezalel, along with Aholiab, along with the wise men in Exodus 36, who build the temple of God. That really doesn't mean much to you until you come to the understanding. When you jaywalk to the New Testament, the temple is no longer the building of bricks made by brick and mortar. But in the New Testament, according to 1 Corinthians 6, verse 19, Paul says, my body is the temple. So the question has to be raised, how does this apply to us in 2016? It applies to us in 2016 because although God called Bezalel to build a physical tabernacle. God is not calling us necessarily to just build a physical tabernacle or a physical temple, even though that's part of it. God is calling us to build people holistically through community development. I'm going to say that again. As Bezalel was called to build a physical tabernacle, God is calling us. I'm talking about New Rising Star. You are a part of New Rising Star, not just to build a physical tabernacle, but he's calling us to build people holistically through community development. Somebody say community development. When I talk about community development, I've already told you over the past 3 weeks, I'm talking about how we develop people. Somebody say it's all about the people. It's about how we develop people, because communities are people and not buildings. It does not mean that you don't need a building, but I really believe that your vision dictates the kind of building that you need. So we develop communities in 6 ways at New Rising Star. We build people in 6 ways at New Rising Star. We do it through education. Everybody say education, financial literacy, workforce development, housing, recreation, and the church. I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. We intentionally chose these 6 areas because whenever you use these 6 areas, watch this, whenever you move into a place and it's the community that you want to live in, not the community that you have to live in, you're making decisions, whether it be directly or indirectly, upon these 6 areas. If you have children, the first question, what are the school systems like? Second question you ask, what are the financial institutions like? Or do we only have payday loan places in the community right up and down First Avenue? You will see a ton of payday loan places. The third question we ask, is there a viable workforce inside of the community? Is there some kind of place that I can get some kind of skills to make a sustainable living? Am I moving here because of a job or to be closer to a job? Fourth question that you ask, does the community have adequate housing? Somebody say housing. Fifth question you ask is the recreational question. What is there to do in the community? I believe when people act out, it is not because they're bad, it's because they're bored. And last but not least, every community needs a thriving, life-giving church. And when you take all 6 of these things and drop them in one community, it makes for a community that's primed and that's poised and that's ready to prosper. I got good news this morning. We already have efforts in all 6 of these areas, and our church is 63,000 square feet, yet we are out of space. Century Plaza is 750,000 square feet, 62 acres, 4,200 parking spaces, 1.3 miles around that property. And not only that, but the contract is for $5.6 million. So the question has to be raised, what do we need with all of that building? We really don't need all the building, but the vision is to use 200 to 250,000 square feet to build our church and our school out inside of that facility, and then partner with other organizations in Birmingham, Alabama, or anywhere else whose visions intersect in 5 out of the 6 of those areas of revitalizing and developing our community. So we're partnering with other people who do education, financial literacy, workforce development, housing, and recreation to build state-of-the-art locations inside of that facility to continue to bring vitality back to the east side of Birmingham, Alabama, because even though God called Bezalel to build a physical tabernacle, he's calling we, his people, not just to build a physical church again, he's calling us to build people holistically. Somebody say holistically. Through community development. Somebody say through community development. So watch this. They are building in Exodus 36. But put this up so everybody can see it. They can't build in Exodus 36 until the people start giving in Exodus 35. Somebody just missed it. I think I'll say it again. They can't build in Exodus 36 until the people started to give in Exodus 35. Isn't it amazing? Exodus 36 verses 1 through 7. Bezalel, Aholiab, and wise men built the sanctuary only after receiving the people's offerings from Moses. So watch this. They build in Exodus 36, but they are not able to build in Exodus 36 until the people start start to give in Exodus 35. And when you read Exodus 35, please read it for your homework. These people were not just giving their tithe and their offering. When you read Exodus 35, they were going above their tithe as a sacrifice. When you read Exodus 35, they were going beyond their tithe as a sacrifice. What does it mean to sacrifice? To sacrifice is to inconvenience myself for the greater good of God's people. If it's not an inconvenience, it's not a sacrifice. But the Bible declares not only did they give sacrificially, but they gave willingly. So the question has to be raised. Let's just be straight up, New Rising Star. How can I give sacrificially if it's an inconvenience and be willing to do it all at the same time? Because many of us are struggling with that thing at this particular moment in time. I mean, Pastor Beavers, that really don't make sense. On one hand, you tell me it's supposed to be a sacrifice, inconvenience myself above my tithe. On the other hand, you say I'm supposed to do it willingly. Here's the answer to that question. You can sacrifice willingly, not when you look at your present, but when you look at the production that's going to get ready to take place in the future. If I'm sacrificing and nothing's getting ready to happen, I get discouraged. But I ain't sacrificing for nothing to get ready to happen. I'm sacrificing because I got a sneaky suspicion that God's getting ready to do what eyes have not seen. I'm sacrificing because I got a sneaky suspicion that God's getting ready to do what ears have not heard. I'm sacrificing because I got a sneaky suspicion God's getting ready to open doors that no man can shut. He's getting ready to shut doors that no man can open, which says to all of us that building people holistically through community development requires resources. Everybody shout, it requires resources. Can I conclude by giving you this last truth? Y'all tired yet? Y'all ready to quit? Y'all ain't been saved y'all whole life. Can I ask you one more time? Y'all tired yet? Y'all ready to quit? Let me give you this last truth. Put it up so everybody can see it. What amazes me is not that they gave, but what amazes me is what the scriptures say in Exodus 36, verses 1 through 7. Watch this. It says, the people brought so many offerings, and they brought them daily, that Moses restrained the people and had to tell the people, stop giving. Shucks. Look how excited they got about the vision. Look how excited they got about God having a resting place. Look how excited they got about developing their communities through education, financial literacy, workforce development, housing, recreation, and the church, all at the same time. They were so excited, they didn't just give. Number one, they gave daily, which says that beyond sacrificial giving, everybody repeat this, my giving must be a lifestyle. If you're not a tither, I need you to start tithing and make it a lifestyle. I told you the blessings of tithing on last week. Not only was given a lifestyle, but number two, what this says to us, their giving did not have a cap. Somebody say, my giving has no cap. Yeah. When you take the limits off God, he'll take the limits off your pocketbook. When you take the limits off God, he'll take the limits off your wallet. When you take the limits off God, first and foremost, he'll take the limits off your heart. Because your pocketbook can't open till your heart opens. Your wallet can't open till your heart opens. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. But the third thing that it says to us is that God gave them a mind not just to give that'll do, but he gave them a mind to give more than enough. Everybody say more than enough. Now watch this. What I like about it is what's not written in the text. When God gave the people the mind to give more than enough, the leadership had the integrity to tell the people, enough is enough. God Almighty. Does everybody see that? When God gave the people the mind to give more than enough, leadership said, we ain't gonna try to pad our pockets. Leadership had the integrity to say enough is enough. I want you to know your leadership has integrity. And I want you to give not because of me, but out of a heart of gratitude for what God has done inside of your life. But I'm believing by faith that this didn't just happen in the Bible. I'm believing this going to happen in 2016. With the people of New Rising Star, the people from all over the United States of America who've getting wind about what we're getting ready to do, the people in Birmingham, Alabama, in the business community, y'all, we got a ton of people rallying behind us. I'm finding myself in places I don't even know how I ever even dreamed to get in these places. And it's not because of me. It's just for such a time as this. I'm finding myself, and I say this very humbly, not just leading Bible study at New Rising Star, but I'm having to sacrifice and go some different places and leading Bible study now for some businessmen, doing it every week. And I ain't asking for nothing, but they show asking about our vision, and they ask about it every week. And every one of these men around the table, just one of them, has pockets deep enough to write us not a $5.6 million check to fund the whole thing. I'm talking about $80 million plus. I'm not going with my hand out begging, but I know one day God's going to open the door. And when he opened the door, I'm going to step through it. So I want you to know it's not just you. But he's not going to just give us enough. He's the God of more than enough. Everybody stand to your feet.